Welcome everybody. You are tuned into the first episode of the Agile Toolkit podcast, and this podcast is dedicated to those who wish to learn more about web software. And your hosts are Romans and Armin, which is myself. And before I head over to Romans to find out more why Agile Toolkit exists and what it's offering, and we would like to work on a practical application, which Romans will explain in a second. And everyone in this Hangout is welcome to ask any questions in the chat room. So if you have a question, your microphone probably will be turned off by us. So type in your question and we'll review and come to that question then at a later stage. Well, what is the Agile Toolkit? I think nobody can explain that better than the guy who actually developed it. And Romans, it's over to you.
Thanks for the introduction, Armin, and thanks everyone else for coming. And for those people who watch us on YouTube, thanks for watching. And if you appreciate this video, please give us some publicity, some likes, some shares. We want this to be as public as possible. So Agile Toolkit have its roots in probably 10 years ago, and it was started when I switched from desktop development into web development. And the whole idea of Agile Toolkit is to have a web development more like a desktop development.
So when talking about toolkit or framework for PHP, I mean, why did you go to create another framework for PHP web development?
When I started creating this, there were no toolkits around, there were not many. This long ago, it was really important to get all the work done in application faster, because when someone opens a website, especially in PHP, all this code we write, it needs to be executed quickly and it needs to produce results. As a computer gets more and more powerful, people can now develop more complex frameworks. They execute more code, but they supposedly easier for developers to operate them.
Okay.
And there are some additional benefits. So it's kind of a struggle here. So the framework needs to do everything quickly, and at the same time it needs to be really code efficient. It needs to be fast in development. I haven't seen any other development environment in PHP, at least, which uses object orientation so much as Agile Toolkit does.
And we will hear lots more about that. Everything in Agile Toolkit is an object at a later stage. Could you summarize what is Agile Toolkit best for?
People start using it for small management applications, such as a simple form for ordering something. And there are applications for managing schools. There are financial related applications such as investment interfaces, payment systems, and so on. Agile Toolkit works really well with displaying and recording transactions. People don't really care about how it looks, not so much, but they need it to be functional. They need to be able to build it quickly. And of course, the same platform can be used for front-end development, fully featured development framework. I don't think it lacks anything.
Okay, so basically, in a word, everything I could do with any other framework. Of course, Agile Toolkit is capable of doing that, but probably in a more elegant, more fast way than others might be. But are there any limitations to the Agile Toolkit?
We're still pretty young. I have published the first version, which was 4.0. It was published a year and a half ago, sometime in January, February 2011. And since then, it has been growing rather quickly, even though I didn't try to promote it too much. I wanted just a small community to help me out and find critical issues with the toolkit which would prevent a wider audience from using that. Just a few months ago, when we released version 4.2, it completely changed the way how model system works. So all the underlying database interactions have been completely rewritten. And that was pretty much based on the feedback I was receiving from the community. People said they want more than MySQL. They said they want other vendors like PostgreSQL. They also wanted NoSQL. So that's now a part of Toolkit.
So I think now that we have that, what do we need to learn before we start getting to know Agile Toolkit?
Okay, so knowing too much here might be harmful. So I have people who have been in about 5 years into different frameworks, and when they come to Agile Toolkit, they constantly overthinking things, and they assume they would need to do this, this, and this, and it turns out to be so much simpler. So it's actually quite good for people who don't know much, but they need to understand how to program. And I'm not trying, and it's never been my goal to create a toolkit, a click and point and clicky thing. You need to know basic PHP things like how to write, how to use variables, how to use methods, how to use objects. What is object? You need to learn how to use object, and also some principles of object-oriented programming, like inheriting things. How can we clone one object, and how can objects relate to each other?
What would you say? What should people do at the very first stage? Should they like download and try the examples themselves, or are we now showing some of the examples, or how would you like to progress?
Certainly, yeah, they should start by looking at online examples, and then the second thing, they should get the copy of the toolkit on their own computer and simply try some of the examples without modifying them and try to understand how the code works. Yes, I will show you just a short introduction how you could get started and get some initial examples running. And the important thing is that you need to have a PHP on your local computer before you actually develop.
Which version should that be?
It's a PHP 5.3.
Okay.
So first of all, if you decided to learn Agile Toolkit, you need to go into the documentation part in here, and there is a book. So I'll quickly explain how the documentation section works, because it might be confusing for the first time. There are sections: introduction, which is just a 5-step introduction which gives you the basic idea of the toolkit. It quickly goes through all the features without explaining any of them in many detail. The book is helping you to learn the toolkit. So every new chapter introduces a new concept. It requires you to read the book page by page, without jumping forward. And once you're done with the book and you have a pretty good understanding of the toolkit, then you can start using documentation, because the documentation refers to many complex things. So in this tutorial I will be referring to book and just showing you where you can find things. So the first thing in the book is about installing LAMP, which stands for Apache PHP MySQL. It doesn't have to be Linux, it could be either Mac or Windows, it works everywhere. And I also point out where you can get some software for Windows and software for Mac. MAMP is a pretty popular software for Mac, Windows here. The one I'm using in this presentation is called AMPPS. Here it is. And this is a new one, but it looks really promising. So we need to get this installed. And pretty much this is what we need to get started with. So I have created a folder on my system. I'm going to show you. So that's my folder. It has a file in here which simply says hello world, and this is the same thing in the browser. So I'm looking at my local host, and it executes a PHP And that's basically the starting point. So we're going to start with that. You need to figure out how you can download MAMP and install it yourself. One other thing I will be using is a text editor. In my previous demos I was using Coda, and now I switched to Sublime. Really good for development, and it's free for Windows, Macs, and it works on Linux as well. So that's my folder in here, and this is my file. So pretty much going to start from here. You just head here, click the download button, and you can decide if you want to get open source or commercial. Say open source, click here. Okay, once it downloads, you get a couple of files which you simply need to put into your in your folder here. So I got this, and I simply need to drop it in. Let me quickly show you what's essential in here. So ATK4, this is pretty much all of Agile Toolkit. This is where Agile Toolkit lives. This folder has a couple of add-ons which are distributed along. The rest of the files is pretty much some examples for your new software, but you can dispose of them and you can replace them with your own files. However, this folder, you shouldn't change anything inside that folder. So that's a standard distribution. When a new version of Agile Toolkit comes out, you could simply take the new ATK4 folder and overwrite this one. So it's really easy to upgrade to a newer version of Agile Toolkit. So now that I have moved my files here, let me see what happens with this page. So it's not saying hello world anymore, but this is basically hello world from your own copy of Agile Toolkit. Now it says here that if you want to do any changes, you should start with this file, and that's what we're gonna do. So we will go into page index, and that's our first file, and let's just copy some example in here. I'm going to click on documentation here and examples, and I'll just take this one, delete everything else here, and just put this example in like that. And there we have it. So that's how we can execute an example in Agile Toolkit. That's the first milestone. So the way how Agile Toolkit works is actually I can bring a couple of slides here. So this is kind of a schema for Agile Toolkit application. So we have one main application object, and inside the application we have a page and a couple of the controllers. Okay, so the controllers are responsible for their own thing, but the page is responsible for drawing that thing in the middle, so that's hello world in here. The rest of the graphic, which is a logo, a menu, and this thing, and also the text on the bottom, it is coming from the application itself. But we can redefine it as also. I'm trying to suggest people don't worry about that for now. We will be able to do it later on. Just focus on what you need to do first, and then we'll get to other things.
Okay.
So I'd like to look a bit deeper into this page object. So first of all, where it is in the code, this is this page object, and in this structure I'm saying I'd like to create a new class based on the page, and this is basically an enhancement to the default page. So my page is going to be a page with a new object in there. And if I can go to the schematic again and scroll to the next one. So I'm looking into page, and first of all there's an association from page to template. So every every visible object in Agile Toolkit has an HTML template attached to it, and it can be modified by you. So you can change how what kind of HTML is it on your page, but it's not mandatory. You can start without that. You can do with it. Even your designer could do it. So you can start developing the code, and designer later on is going to change the template. Now things were placed into the page are called views, and hello world in here, it is a view. So I added view inside a page, and this is the default construction in Agile Toolkit.
So, and I think it's important to point out one more time that even this hello world view now is, of course, an object. And unlike a normal PHP programmer would like echo and then hello world, we are adding an object that has the view, like here, to a page. So we're adding the object to another object.
That's right. And it's very similar to how desktop systems are working, where you have different objects on the screen, and they will only draw themselves when it's necessary. For example, if you move a window around, some Windows systems will redraw buttons and contents of the screen, or when you resize the window. But and it's the same in Agile Toolkit. So we create this structure of objects on our page, and then depending on what's necessary, Agile Toolkit is going to produce HTML and draw it on the page. Like here. Okay, should I look into another step in here? And this is actually important. So a view can consist of other elements as well. So a view, in our case, hello world was a simple view, but view can contain another views. Let me see if I can get example like that. So I'm gonna do page add info. So this is like a small info box. Let's see if it works. Yeah, so we have this information thing in here. And now next thing I would like to do, I'd like to put hello world inside this box. So instead of using page, I'm going to assign this object to a variable, info. And here I'm going to substitute page for info. So now this object has been added into another object. And with Agile Toolkit, you can do that every time. You can any object which exists, it can be added anywhere. Where would you like to go from here?
We could introduce the idea of the web page that we're going to create, like Lost and Found. I tell you a little bit about my background. I'm a self-employed developer myself. There is a website called bodelgo.com, which I developed. It's a platform for finding voiceover talents, like they are used for commercials, audiobooks, and all that sort of things. And I programmed it without any framework at all. And for 1 year, I'm now like having the plan to completely rebuild the website. But I really wasn't happy with any of the frameworks that are out there, because I thought they were all like too big for what I really needed, and not really complicated. But then documentation was quite heavy. Like the send stuff is really heavy. So then I found Agile Toolkit, and I really liked it the first second I saw it. So the basic idea is people lose things. They lose their keys, they lose their umbrellas, they lose their girlfriends maybe. No, they lose a lot of things. And actually, when you would think that there's this really great website already that helps people in any country of the world to find their stuff that they lost. And after a little research, the only page that like really does it internationally is the page you're seeing right now. And well, it looks rather horrible, and I think the functionality is rather horrible. It's not easy, it's not fun to do, and so our idea was for this tutorial to create a website, Lost and Found, that actually really could help people finding things. Now, how do we want to achieve that? Well, on the one hand, the goal will be that users that found something, for example, your key, they go to the website and say, hey, I live in Munich, I found this, let's say, in the club called Hearts, and I found the key, and not only that, but I gave it to the official lost and found office in Munich. So a guy that loses his keys goes to the website and finally finds out, oh wow, it has been found, and I can retrieve it there. Because the problem is, many things are found, but the people never get to know that. Even if you would like lose an item in a club, and you would call the club next morning or next evening and say, did you find my keys? Maybe the club owner don't have your keys, but maybe the guy that found your keys already gave it to the official lost and found, and you would never ever know or hear about that. So this is what the site should do. And so we have people that lose something, we have people that found something, and they can be connected on a site like that. Maybe we can, put the microphone on. And what we want to do is we want to build this application, like Roman said, in front of your eyes, where we introduce, okay, what kind of database models do we need, what kind of MySQL tables do we need, and step by step composing this application for you.
Okay, great. So I suppose as with any application on the web, we need to plan things ahead a little bit. And now I'd like to point out one interesting difference between if you're using a general framework and Agile Toolkit. Agile Toolkit, the reason why it's called Agile is because you can develop in this Agile methodology, and that means you get things done quickly, precisely, and then you keep coming back to them and refine them. And this is also how we are going to start with this database. So we're going to start with a really basic functionality, and we're going to enhance it, as opposed, I suppose, with other frameworks, you will need to design the whole database first completely, and then modifications might be not as easy as before. So yeah, we'd like to start with some really basic models and basic things you can do.
So the very first thing that a website like that would need is a form to report a missing item, and I think we start with that.
Okay, what I'm going to be using, guys, is the tool which is called Microsoft Workbench. Oh, sorry, not Microsoft,
But of course, if you're like familiar with any other MySQL admin tool, that should work for you as well. This is just the thing that Roman loves so much.
The reason why I like it is because I was looking into other things which allows you to model databases, and there's simply nothing else. There are tools which allows you to administer database, but no modeling. So in this situation, we can create tables like this, and we can drag them around and link them to each other, and decide what table is going to be like. One table is going to be user, another table is going to be item, and let's just create a couple of fields. So it's not a limitation anymore of Agile Toolkit, but I'm trying to have a paradigm or convention in all of my database design, that we have ID field, which is called ID. It's not called user ID, it's called ID. And all the tables is going to have ID field. And if we need to have any reference between the table, let me create something like that. Okay, so this is how we're doing that. And let me just add a couple of more fields, name, email for the user. For item, you could also say name of the item. And that's it for now. We're going to add more fields later on. And what's important, we're not going to need to change interface as we add additional fields. So the next step really is if we return here and give our database a name, and let's just go with Unicode. All right, and I can't show you the menu, but there is many options called synchronized model, and it brings up this dialog. So every time I run this, it is going to connect to my database, and it is going to compare what I have in my database and what I have in my model in here, and it will propose me the changes. So we'll see it a lot later on. So for now, just creating initial structure, and I'm going to go ahead with this. And now my database is complete. The next step I'd like to do is I'd like to go to our installation of Agile Toolkit and see if it can connect to database. And it's done if I click on this database test.
Now we see we saw quickly when we saw the MySQL kind of source code that there were like references between those tables. Now, if I don't happen to have MySQL Workbench, or if I don't want to use that, how would I do those foreign keys?
You don't have to. It's primarily, some people use them, other people don't like foreign keys. It's entirely up to you. There is no requirement for that.
So Agile Toolkit is not like relying on
No.
things like that?
No.
Okay.
Okay. So next thing I'm going to take a look in is configuration files. There are two files coming with default distribution. One is a config default and other is config strip. And there is a little bit of confusion what they do. So default is, those are defaults for application. If you're going to be distributing your application, you can put more defaults in here. The strip usually is something we are renaming. Actually, let me create a new file here called config. Oops.
Oops.
Okay, so again, I don't need to create a configuration file, but if I want to change some settings locally, such as my database, and then I'm doing it in this file. The reason why I made a copy is because I don't want anyone to know my secret password, and I don't want that to be shared if I'm using a versioning control system, which we'll look into later. For now, let's say there is a default configuration and there is a custom configuration here. Okay, so I changed the database, and I can confirm that it still works. And the next thing I'd like to do is I'd like to describe my tables as the models. So I will need to create a new model. Now, first I'll show you a wrong way to do it, and then I'll show you the right way. So you are already familiar with the index.php file. This is the one we started with, right? So in theory, I can define a class here. I could say class model user. Okay.
So model table is a class that comes with the Agile Toolkit framework. Maybe you can explain what this class is doing.
Okay. Yeah. So This is the interface for our data layer. The model table is pretty much handling all the data interaction in Agile Toolkit. And when we have a, well, I suppose we'll start by defining it. So what I'm writing now is pretty much standard code. It appears very often as you develop. Let's see what. So I just wanted to quickly name. Okay, and we're done. So I have described quickly a model here for the table user, but no one else except this model will know which table is actually stored in. If I want to use this model in my page, what I need to do is I say m equals this model user set, let's do this name John, save. So if I execute that code, there won't be any visual feedback. I need to connect database. Yeah, the reason why these things comes up is because I'm not connected to the database, and I need to initialize the connection first. Okay, so nothing really appears, but it created a new record and it's saved into the database. Now, of course, other frameworks allow us to do the same, and this thing is called ORM. ORM, Object Relational Manager. So it allows us to define a business objects, and then it allows us to work with them easily. But the benefit of Agile Toolkit here is that I can use this in collaboration with one of the views, such as let's say form. So I'm saying this add form, and then I assign form the model. So what happens now, it creates a form and I have a name here. Let me go here and add another field, email. If I look at the page again, it now has two fields. So what happens here is model contains this information about our database. It knows that it has a field name and email. And when a different view, this is a view called form, when it tries to draw itself, it looks into the model and asks, come on, tell me what kind of fields you have. And for each field it displays an input element. So I don't need to go and draw this in some sort of views and mess with HTML and templates. It's all happening automatically. Okay. And of course, through the model, I can modify how we call this meta information. So caption, for example, for name would be full name, and let's also say this is a mandatory field, and if it's not written in, say fill in the name. Okay, so that's changed. Now this form doesn't have any buttons yet, but I can hit enter and it attempts to submit. So you see it automatically does the coloring. It takes all the worries from me as developer and simply lets me to do my job and create this form, to find any relevant logic with this form. I don't need to worry about
only one line. Imagine if you would do that by hand, you would end up with like probably 100 lines to do.
Let me add a button to the form. So again, a form is an object, so I'm going to say form equals this because I want to do many things with the form. Set the model, and add the submission button. So now we have a form.
Could I just change, now we have like the save, could I just give an argument and call it like confirm or something different by just giving an argument?
Of course, yes.
Just to...
Yeah. Now what I need to explain is that this add submit, so it's a property of the object. If you're not familiar with objects, this variable form is carrying the object, and then when we have structure like that, it is executing a method of an object. It's like a local function, and local function is associated with this object. That's why it already have all the information from the object, and it just all works seamlessly. And what add button does, it simply creates a new object which is called button, and it puts it inside the form. That's what's happening behind the scene, but no, it's just here for convenience. So when I click that, it submits the form. Now I need to also do something in case the form was successfully submitted, and the format of that is if form then I'm doing something here. Okay, so now if I click the button, okay, I forgot to execute. Okay, it works. In time I will explain how this whole thing works, and it looks a little bit complicated, but it's necessary because our application is HTML based, and that's why there are a small limitations in there, and it's not looking ideal. But basically what this does is it instructs the browser to show alert button when something is submitted. And here I can actually use some of the form data. Let's say form, I'm going to take name from the form and display it. So if I click confirm now, it shows me this. You also might have noticed that I didn't reload the page. So I'm simply changing my PHP code here. I'm clicking confirm button. It doesn't reload my page. It's the same page as before. Just the action is different. So these are the capabilities of a form. So this is what we can do with a form. But form is only one element. What people's favorite is CRUD. Let me just show you how CRUD is working. Really easy. CRUD stands for create, read, update, and delete. And while in other frameworks they kind of really strongly encourage you to create CRUDs, in Agile Toolkit it's just one of the view elements. Okay, let me do this. So now that I have it, there is a John, which I created earlier, and I can edit entries. You can see the same form. It's actually using the same class for the form. Button is the same. Okay, I can modify things. I can add new records. Like Peter. And the whole thing is not reloading the page again. So the whole CRUD is using Ajax to draw itself. So it's really quick and really usable when you introduce that in applications.
And when I'm adding somebody here, he will actually be in the database as well. It's not only like showing on the screen, but the new record will be transferred to the database.
Yes, it is in the database. Yeah. I can show IDs if. Let's see the IDs as well. So it's assigning IDs. They are coming from MySQL automatically.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's a fundamental. This is what many of the Agile Toolkit find the most, the nicest thing to do is to have this CRUD and then work with it. But again, CRUD consists of elements, so it relies on this ability to incorporate other elements. So if I another element I'm going to introduce is grid, and this is no buttons. This is just this list of things. It's not functional. It doesn't have buttons by default. I can add them, but this is one of the components which is fundamental to CRUD, and you can use that as well, like this.
So, and for example, if I would be a user and I'm only allowed to edit my information, but not, for example, to delete my information or to add a new user, could I choose which of the buttons, like delete, edit, add, would appear, or will they always appear when I use CRUD?
If you use CRUD, you can choose that, but what I'm advising people to do, if it's a sign-up form, then just use form. And if you just need to create a list of users and perhaps add a button, use grid and the button. Don't use CRUD, because CRUD introduces a lot of functionality. You don't always need all that.
Okay.
Take whatever is most efficient. Another element, I'm not sure if it will work, we'll try, is lister. Yeah, so it's this is a really fundamental view, and what it does, it simply lists elements, simply lists their name. The reason why we need something like that is because it's really nice when you use lister with your custom template. So you can customize the way how each element looks here. Add bullet points, or maybe put them into squares, and you can put all HTML for that. And lister is an ideal thing to do it.
Yeah, and when we finally come up with a model of items that are lost, and we want to make a list of what items are lost at the moment, we can maybe add a little bit of our own look and feel to this list.
That's right. Also, there are a couple of views which simply reflect something as simple as header. So I can do this, and it has this thing in here. Let's just review a little bit what we have done so far. So we created a database for users and items. We created a list of items, of users, but not of items. It would be nice if we could also have a list of items. But before that, let me just explain to you how to properly put this class into a separate page. I added it to the same file as index.php just for convenience initially, but the way how it should be stored under lib. Lib contains all the classes except for pages. So if it's model_user, we need to create a folder called model in here, and inside there we need a new file which is called user.php. Like this.
So the name is important, and how it's written.
Exactly. The case is important. So now I can delete this class from here, save it, and put it inside here.
So it needs to correspond with the database.
It needs to correspond with the name of the class. Yeah. So what happens is when this thing here is called, when I'm adding the model user, if the class is not defined yet, it is going to include this file. So you can see that it still works. It loads from the proper class now. And it's important to put things into separate files, so we don't incur a lot of clutter in our class. So we could put lots of things in a single file and it will work, but it's really difficult to try and understand something in there. So what I'm saying to users is, as your class is growing bigger than 100 lines, create a new class and move things in there. For example, we could create a custom view and then put some things inside in there. Would like to see how to do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So let's say we have a list of users here, which uses a lister and a title. Maybe there's going to be some additional things to it, but we'd like to create it as a separate object. So what I will be using is I'm going to add user, let's say view user list. Okay, I'm going to show you the error message it shows me. It says unable to include this, and it also provides you with additional information telling where it was trying to find it. So that's a folder for application. It was trying to look under lib under folder view for user list. It's really helpful, this thing. So if you create a file and it doesn't appear to be working, it can help you locate the problem. Okay, so view. Okay, and with any view or model or application in Agile Toolkit, it is pretty much the same the same layout we're going to be using. So it's going to be always class view user list extends view, and we're always redefining function init. We don't use any constructors, we don't use anything complex in here. We try to keep it as simple as possible because constructors are being used internally by Agile Toolkit and it wants you to use init. We always need to call parent, otherwise it will complain. And here, let's say we now want to move those two lines. Would like to move in here. Okay, the problem is that I need to define
isn't yet.
Yeah, model. Now I can specify either a name of the model, like user, in here. It will work fine. Or I can create this model as an object and then specify it as an object. It works either way. Anyway, so right now what we did, I moved some of the functionality outside of the index page. All I need to have is this thing, and it shows me the list of users. I don't even need this model anymore. Okay, so next thing, let's create a new model for item. Oh, but before that, let me change the structure slightly. And where it says item, let me add type, and it's either found or lost. Okay, because I think we can put items in a single table in the model.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because they have many properties like their current location, pictures, and so on. But they can be either found or lost. Okay, so now that I changed something in a database, I'm going to do this synchronization again. Continue. But this time, it is not going to recreate the whole database, but it will always only say, okay, there is one difference and one column missing, so it will only change that. And important thing here is if we're running the application on several instances, for example, I might be running it on my local computer, on my client's computer, and some other developers might be running it at the same time. We can't be exchanging the schemas all the time. Like, we need to have those gradual updates to the database saying this column was added and so on. So it's important that we learn how to alter tables instead of simply doing that. And I will show later on how it can be done with the server and my computer. So for now, I'm just going to update the database. But this is one of the reasons why I'm using MySQL Workbench, is because it can produce those incremental changes in the database. Okay, so I'm going to create I'm going to work on a new model now. Guys who's listening to this, if you have any questions in the meanwhile, please type them in the chat, so we could have a short Q&A session maybe. If maybe I forgot to explain something. Item. Here I'm using a macro for Sublime, which creates a model for me. It's really easy. And I'm going to add two fields, first is name and the second is type. And because type can have only two values, I'll define them lost or found. Okay.
Okay.
So, all right, let me try and go back to this index page and create a CRUD again for this new model I have just created. And item. Okay, I have no records for now. I can say wallet was lost. Okay, so this is now MySQL talking, and it says that the field for user ID is required. I will add it, but actually let me add it as well. So I'll show you how easy it is. So if I go to item, and here I'd say this has one user. Now it will look up a model with the same name, and it will figure out how the field should be called and all that. So next time when I choose this, I can choose which user it belongs to. So Bill have lost his wallet. As you can see, it automatically pulls the Bill's name here, and I can edit. Change to a different user if I want to. The UI handles it seamlessly. And if I edit the name of the user and replace it, then it is going to be reflected here as well.
Sure.
Okay, so that's a really short introduction to models, how we can use models, and how we can integrate them with the UI elements. I just wanted to highlight how easy it is to do anything like this, and it is actually quite complicated. It might seem very simple here, but if you're just developing PHP application, you're going to have a lot of trouble doing this.
Without Agile Toolkit, that is.
Of course. Okay.
So for an item list, probably it's not really good if I can just choose you that you found something. Like if you click the add button, please, for me.
Okay.
So if I'm a user, of course, I should not be given like now a list of all users selecting who found or lost something. I think we need a slightly different approach where like the users, well, like we have to like log in, of course, and or
authentication, yeah.
And so that it's clear that I'm the person that has lost something or found something. But is that something for the next tutorial? And or what is your plan?
Probably, yeah. Let's leave the authentication. It is possible. We'll definitely do it. Let's leave it for next tutorial. But in this tutorial, I'll show one other fundamental thing, and this is important to understand because it is one of the significant advantages in Agile Toolkit, and it's basically how I can create a sub-models or models based on another models. So for now, let me create a new folder which is called item. And inside that folder, I'm going to create two new files. One will be called lost, and another file is going to be called found. And in these files, I'm going to create a model item found. But instead of extending the standard class, I'm going to extend my item model. Okay, so if I look closely at item model, it already defines the table, so I don't need that. I'm going to delete this line.
Because it's inherited.
It's inherited, yeah. But what's different between just item in general and the item which is found? And it's the condition. So items which are found have a new condition for the field type, and it must be found. So what happens now? Let me add just a couple of items here. Girlfriend is found.
And the girlfriend lost an I believe.
Sorry?
The girlfriend lost an I before the E in friend. Just kidding.
Okay. That was a boyfriend. Okay, I need to choose that. All right. So now, what happens if I go into this page, and instead of having item here, I would specify item found. First of all, it limits me only to the items which are found, so only girlfriend was found. That's the first thing. There is no way how view can access all the other elements, so there's a big there's a lot of security in this thing. So someone who is building the UI, he won't possibly be able to access other records. If I add a new record, it wouldn't let me choose type anymore. Let's say money. Okay, I need to pick the user. Money. Okay, it automatically sets this type by default.
Yes.
And again, if I try to do an operation like delete thing or edit thing, if it's not a proper type, even though if ID matches, it will fail. That's a really important thing. So when we're trying to edit something and it sits in the same table, pretty often we'll forget about conditions. And if you open this and then you somehow hack it to try and edit a different record, in many systems online actually it allows you, but Agile Toolkit doesn't allow that, and it does it transparently. One other thing I should probably mention is that any input which is undesired, such as trying to trying to type in bold things, now it's being properly escaped, or it can even be cleaned out. But Agile Toolkit respects it doesn't let you execute any stuff, so it's pretty secure from the very beginning. Even though I didn't.
I don't have to take care about like proper real escape string. Those functions are not any longer important to me.
That's right. And the goal here is that we understand that people make mistakes. If a developer can make the mistake, he will make the mistake. So what we want to do is a system to take care of that automatically. So we take out the human factor out of this, and the system is just secure by default.
Okay. I have one more question. Now, when we edit this CRUD with set model item found, and in the form we were not able to change from found to lost. Now, how does Agile Toolkit determine that it must not show, like, or giving me the option to choose from lost and found? Like we had this menu before where I could choose lost and found.
Here, yeah?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so let's just see what happens. So we inherit item, and item really defines three fields. This is field number 1, number 2, and number 3. And this field type, it has some information about, this is the meta information about the field. When I add this condition, it will make the field hidden. It will hide it.
Okay.
I could actually show it if I do this, get and type. Let's see if I can do editable true. So I'm kind of building a sort of a hack and see if that field is back. Okay, it's back. You see it is found by default. It says the default value.
Yes.
Let me set to lost and let me try to add the record. And as you can see, it produced the error. The back end of the system won't let me physically to create a new model because it's not the condition I have given. So again, that's back to the security. But in terms of hiding and showing fields, we can control that as well. So if, for example, well, let's say now I'm going to delete this modification edit. So it's back to normal. But let's say I want to have user first and then name after. How do I do that? So when of course I could go back to my model and change the fields in there, but it might not be what's the best way. How do I change in the page and change order? And this is where the second argument, set model, comes in. Here I can say which fields I want to have. Let's say I would like to have name only. And in this case, I would have only name in here. I will also have names in here as well, so it only shows me the names. I could say I want name and type. So there is type found, even though it's hidden by default. It can be added like this. It's not showing here because it's not editable field. Finally, I could let me add the first field for user ID. Now it's not going to show here. Oh, it shows as ID. But it changed the order in here. And when I create this construction, which was this has1 method, it also creates a field called user, and that's the name of the user. So we have all the information at our disposal, and we can use it, manipulate how we want. Another thing about CRUD is that it accepts a third argument in here actually, which would be the grid fields. So if I click add, I still have the same. So this influences the editing form, and this applies to the grid. So it's just out of convenience again, but you can design your own editing systems. You know, all the buttons in here are really easy to add, and it's creating a grid is easy, even if you don't have the grid class. Okay.
So, are there any questions so far by users? Well, they seem all to be pretty fine because nobody has a question so far. So, again, asking to all the guys out there, just type the questions that you might have in the chat window, and we'll cover those.
I think that maybe our audience is a bit more advanced than the level we started with, so they might looking at that and it might be boring for them. Maybe you want to hear anything on conceptual level. Some ideas how we would like to finish application for today? Any additional features?
I think for an overview, what can be done very easily with models and CRUD, I think we covered kind of many things today. I think that for the next tutorial, we would like then really start with, okay, we're having different pages, the user page, the items page, like items lost, items found, and probably trying to connect users with items properly, and that will be like the goal for the next tutorial.
Okay. All right. So Ogunyan asking us about joining. I think we still have, like, our goal was a 2-hour session, and I think we still have half an hour. Let's do a couple of things and also include the subqueries. So what I'd like to do is, because this page becomes pretty crowded, I'd like to create a new page. Okay, let me first show how to do a new page. And you do it by simply creating a new file inside the page folder. So we have about, test. Let me add a new file, which would be called let's say my items PHP. And again, I'm using my macro here, which helps me create a page. Okay, so what I want to do on this page, I'd like to show items which I have, let's say, lost.
Yes.
But I'd like that to also include an email. So first of all, let me add this grid. Oops. And grid, and I'm also is going to show a little bit behind the scenes how things work in here. And set model item, I'll say M. This. Okay, so I added a create new file. It's not appearing here by default. If I want to do anything which affects all of my application, I need to look into the file called frontend in here, this file. And here is where the menu is defined. So for now, I'm just gonna add my items. Was it my items?
My items, yes.
Okay, I'm gonna add it like this. What you can notice is that now I type this item as the name of the page. Agile Toolkit attempts to do some work for me and capitalize it in the menu to make it look nice. Okay, so I click here, I have a name and a user of an item. Let me show you what is the query it's using. So we have a model M. If I call M debug, it will show me the query which is being executed in the database, and it's here. I don't know if it's possible to see this.
Yeah.
Okay, so it selects a couple of fields from the database, name, the user is being selected as a subquery, ID and type from item, and obviously because there was a condition, it also creates a where clause for the item equal type. Now, how can we modify this query? One thing is we can actually change it here, because this is an object. We can do more things in here. Let's say would like to add, of course we could do add field, but let's do something more complex. Let's add expression. Add expression, and for now let's say the expression field would be called as test, and then we set the actual expression, which would be like that. Let's see if this works. Okay, so we have a new field now. It's recognized by CRUD. It's being displayed properly, but the way how it's being selected is like this. So it actually has this expression in there. And we can put any SQL expression here, such as so concat name and email. Let's see if this will work. Oh no, that's right. It's I'm choosing the wrong table. Let me hide this for a while, and let's get the join first. And the way how we join a model is by writing join, and we need to specify a table here, which can be item. Now there are two ways how we can join that, and it depends on either it's a one-to-many or many-to-one relationship. So in our case, it is item which has a field user ID like that. Okay, so does it work? Okay, from item, inner join item. Sorry, I need to write user here. I think like this. Okay, perfect. So what happens now is it modified my select by adding a join to the user table. It gave it automatic alias, and it did a proper join. But no additional fields were imported from this. So when we're doing this join, this method actually is returning another object to us. So we could say user equals this, and then we can add fields from this join. Add field email, like this. So what happens now is now we have, basically we're selecting items. Our primary table is still item. We have the name of the item, but we have the name of the user here, and we have an email of the user. And as you can see, it automatically selects it in the proper way. You email in here. So the key point here is Agile Toolkit support joins, and they're pretty good at supporting joins.
But it's joining the model rather than the data, the tables.
No, it's joining the tables. It's not joining the model, and the reason is because each model could have a couple of tables it's selecting. So you could have items which would have a couple of joins, and maybe user which have a couple of joins. So when we join, we really need to specify the condition here. Let's okay. Well, all the items are for Peter for some reason. Let's see if we can, change this to Bill. And now we go to my items. Okay, like that. So let's. We have another question, which is how we can add additional where clause. And we can add, because we added a field which is called email like this, it works as a regular field. So I can, when I do set model, I can use this field. I can, when I'm creating a new entry, I can again use this field. It will create entries in both tables. So it will first create a user item, and then it's going to create item user entry and an item entry. Because of the way I join it. I can also add the conditions in here. So model add, I could say email, and let's see, is not let's try this. Okay, not like that. Not equals to empty email. Alright, so what basically happened here, it was a condition on the field which was joined. It wasn't in an initial table, but it was it originated from a different table. So that's a bit, I think it's a bit complex for the first lesson, but what the hell.
We have another question. Is this for have one type of relations only?
It is. No, it's well, actually, when I specified, when I went into item and said the item has one user, what this creates, it creates a subquery. It doesn't create a join. This is subquery. But when I'm in here and I'm doing the joins, then it does a proper join. So those are completely unrelated. You can have a couple of joins and subqueries side by side, and they're not going to conflict with each other. They're just been used for different purposes. I'll probably cut this part as well. All right, let's try to get back to some easy stuff. Let's do a little bit more of UI. Okay, so on the welcome screen we have this grid which shows us found items. How about we create a grid for lost items? All I'm going to do is copy this class in here. Lost. Change the type, and now I have a separate class for lost, and I'm going to add a new CRUD. I'm going to delete this. Okay, so we have a list of found items and a list of lost items, but let's put them into an object which is called tabs. Tabs. What tabs allows us to do, it allows us to create, those jQuery UI tabs on top. You can switch between them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what I'm doing here is tabs, and it's found items. Doing it like this. Okay, short explanation what's happening here. So I create a new object which is called tabs. This is how it looks. 2 tabs, one and second one. And then I add a new tab in here, and obviously this method also returns me an object, and then inside that object I insert a CRUD and then a set model for that CRUD. So the whole CRUD ends up being inside the tab and not on the page. But this thing on the bottom, it's no longer being inserted into tabs. That's why it appears on the bottom, and regardless of which tab I'm editing, and it's like this. Okay, and another UI element which is usually is difficult to deal with, but because we use a token and its object, it's easy. I can also add items, and I'm still in the same tab. I'll switch back and forth. Okay. So, well, the pagination. Okay. Let me explain what pagination is. Armin, do you know about pagination? Do you know about pagination?
No, I'm not sure if I know this term.
Pagination, when you have a lot of items on a single page.
Yeah, sure. Now, I didn't just know I was not sure about the English meaning. Yes, now I know it. Yes.
Okay. Let me go back to this page. I'm going to use this page as an example. And first of all, instead of items found, I'm going to change it to all the items. Okay, and let's say there are too many items and they don't fit in some of the screens. So I'd like to add a pagination here. And the way how I do it, there is a special object for that, which is called paginator. Yeah, so I'm having again this object for grid. I associate that with the model, and I need to add paginator like this, and let's say 3 items per page. So what happens now is it creates this automatic pagination, automatically separates my items into 3, like this, into pages. And again, it's all done with Ajax, I believe, so it's not changing my URL in here. So it's safe, even if it's inside a tab, it's going to be safe.
Well, my Kyrillian is not so good. Is that Peter the name? Oh. He's asking, can you show the HTML code?
Soniev. Yeah.
Oh well.
Ognan, do you want to show HTML code? Sorry.
He likes to see the HTML code of that page.
You mean of that page, or do you want me just to put some HTML code on the page?
No, I think it's the HTML code of this specific page.
Okay, yeah, we can do that. So the whole page, let me expect that. The whole page is being optimized and cleaned up to produce a proper HTML code. So it's not using layers of divs. It tries to be really clean about the code. So we actually have table in here. This table, and there are those elements. There's a pagination on the bottom. It's all valid code, and Another thing what's important is if I look at the source of this page, and that's the source of the page, all this HTML was actually being rendered by the engine. There are those are the cells. It's not like the whole thing relies on JavaScript. It does use a bit of JavaScript, but it's not entirely reliant on JavaScript. Yeah, that's all right. That's the proper HTML code.
So it's HTML5 we are talking about.
Oh, it's yeah, you could use some. It doesn't really use any advanced features of HTML5, but it is, I suppose, compatible with HTML5. So it's if you build application on Agile Toolkit and you use custom templates, it is really difficult to tell it apart from any other application built from scratch, for example, because it produces a very comparable HTML.
Yeah.
Let me show you how you can add HTML on the page. So that one thing is like that. You can add HTML like this. Is a class. Bold. So if, okay,
the question is refined now.
I just messed up the URL. Okay, so this is how one of the way how I can add it a HTML code like that. But also I could use a template. I can show the HTML code on the page. Can you show the HTML code on the page? So is there an actual URL? You mean for this inspector? There's no URL for that. But as you go to any page, you can view source of that page, and you can examine that. Okay, let me just show you how you could create a view with a custom template. And so far, when we added something, I only used the first argument. There are actually additional arguments. If you don't want to specify them, you can type no. And the fourth argument is specifying the template. Now, the most, I suppose, the usual way how we define that is through array, and you can say view my view like this. So what happens now, if it will attempt to display this view, it will still have the same logic of a normal view, but it will try to do a different template. And that template needs to be located under this folder, templates, default, view, and it should be my view HTML. Okay, and in here we could have any code. Let me just put an image in here. Okay, so that's basically a template for having an image. And let's see if it will appear on the bottom. Items. Save this. Okay, I'm not sure why not. The text is there, something with image.
So is the image there where it should be?
I think it should be there, yeah. So was lost and found. I see, yeah. I see what the problem is. The image actually is there.
But it's white.
It is white, exactly. So it's a tricky way how we matching image to the background, and we put a layer of color behind the transparent image. So it was a bad attempt to actually try and put image in here, but yeah, any HTML here would simply work. Yeah, so it's being inserted into our page as is, no modifications. And this is how we can put any piece of HTML into our page. Now, since we talked about, since I start talking about HTML, let me also talk about.
I think we need to turn off some microphone. It's Claudio.
Okay, hello? I think it's better.
Yes, I'm still
okay, so right, so your question earlier was what it is that produces this logo in here and the stuff on the bottom and the menus and so on, and this is the template of an application. So our application here, if you remember, it was defined in a front-end class. This is our application class. It is actually have a template of its own, which has a header and the footer. And because we didn't define it in our templates, it is looking into ATK4 as a fallback, and it's coming out of sorry, this file here, shared HTML. So that's default. Let me take all this, and before we do any modification, I don't want to do it in ATK4. Instead, I will create file in here. Okay, so for now I just copy the whole thing as it is. Let me just change something. Let's say 3 or 4 here. And as you can see, because we have this file locally now, instead of taking the ATK4 file, it takes the one which I have in my local repository. So you wanted to change the logo. It was here somewhere. Let me delete the logo. And now we have no logo. Okay, we can put some other logo in here. So that's the easy way how we can edit things. We can see that the menu, which was an object in here, it's actually being inserted in here. And while we look at the menu, at the HTML, at the templates, I'd like to point out those tags. So you can see the content tag in here. This is where all of our object content goes into, and this is the syntax of the template. It's a templating system which is specific for Agile Toolkit. It is really simple and straightforward. The only thing it has is tags. Tags can define regions. For example, the menu defines this region in here. This is where it closes. What PHP classes do, they manipulate with those regions, and I can take contents of one region and put it to another, or they can take the whole region and use it as a template, and so on. So there are many different variations, but at the end, all the objects rely on templates.
Mm-hmm.
And similarly, we could look into grid HTML. So that's the template which is used to produce grid, the one we have here. So it describes how the body of the grid, how headers looking like. It's only here. There are many tags because it's a rather complex view, but it's in there. There is a tag for paginator in here. Okay.
And whenever I want to customize it to my own needs, I probably go with that as a blueprint. I copy the file into my application folder and make the changes I want to.
Exactly. Yeah. So let's put it under. We just need to remember which directory it was in. So let me look it up. So it was under shared without view. And here actually you have two options. If you put under the same name in here, it will affect all the grids. So all the grids will look differently. But if you want to affect only a single grid, then you just use the fourth argument when you're adding that particular grid. It's that simple. So you can theme all of the particular objects by replacing the existing, by substituting and not replacing it, because you don't do any changes inside ATK4. Or you could create your own view or your own button and specify a different template to it. Let me add a new file. Put this in. Move paginator to the top. Let's say in here, and call it my grid. So now we can see that it still has the old grid in the same look and feel, but if we edit the page and here specify fourth argument, like this, it's going to put the pagination on top.
Mm-hmm.
So nothing is really set in stone. If there are things which Agile Toolkit have by default, and which is UI, but it can be completely customized and completely change the whole thing.
Okay. Well, we are pretty much 2 hours now, and before you might like to kind of do like a roundup. So we saw many different things today, and we probably have to excuse yourself if it was not that structured as we might wanted it to have. Surely enough, we'll improve on that. But I think we got a very good overview of the basic structure of Agile Toolkit and what it is able to do. And we looked at like the models and the views, and could see what great tools there are and how easy it is to achieve things really fast. And for the next thing, we will probably go for a more structured approach, and I have already some ideas for Romans how to do that, and looking forward to that.
It was me, Romans, and Armin. Armin, thanks very much for participating and helping me organize this.
Thank you too, and thanks to all the guys that were watching this, and hopefully you'll join us next time. Surely enough, we'll send out an invitation to you, and yeah, I'm looking forward to really kickstart then our project with your help and suggestions. This might be a very interesting project to work on and to learn the Agile Toolkit from.